Have you ever felt that despite all your efforts, you just can't emotionally disconnect from someone who has become an inescapable part of your life? That person seems to consume your energy, occupies every thought, and lurks in every corner of your mind, affecting your emotions, your mood, and even your outlook on life. Perhaps it is someone with whom you have shared deeply significant moments, and even though you know somewhere deep down that this attachment might be unhealthy, every memory and interaction seems to have the power to destabilize you. You tell yourself repeatedly that you need to let go, that freeing yourself is the only way to regain control over your mental and emotional peace. Yet each attempt to break the bond seems to fail. A single word, an image, a long-forgotten memory resurfaces, and suddenly you are caught in that same whirlwind of emotions once again, feeling trapped as if you were a prisoner of your own thoughts. This isn't just an occasional setback, it's a recurring pattern that many experience in silence, grappling with deep, hard to release attachments and struggling with the idea that the person who holds such sway over your emotions is still dominating your life, even when they're physically absent. The reason it is so difficult to emotionally detach from someone lies far deeper than a mere habit or a surface level connection. It has to do with internal patterns, unmet desires, and the emotional needs that we carry within us, often without even realizing it. Deep in our psyche, the people we love or form intense bonds with come to fill a void we feel inside. Unconsciously, we assign them a crucial role, providing a sense of security or a feeling of worth and identity that, in truth, should come from within ourselves. This phenomenon is far more common than most would care to admit. Its roots may lie in our personal histories. For example, if you have experienced rejection, abandonment, or insecurity in the past, those memories and emotional wounds continue to influence the way you relate to others today. Without even realizing it, you may carry an emotional baggage that conditions your relationships, leading you to cling to someone in the desperate hope that they will fill the emptiness inside you. Rather than simply being in love with who they are, you become attached to the idea that they are the only source of your well-being, the only one capable of restoring that lost sense of wholeness. This attachment then is less about the person themselves and more about what they represent, a kind of idealized image that you have projected onto them. In psychology, this is known as projection, where you assign to someone else parts of yourself or attributes you believe are missing. In doing so, you inadvertently create a bond that is as fragile as it is intense. You come to rely on them not just for companionship, but for a sense of self-worth and validation. And when that idealized image starts to shatter in the light of reality, when you begin to see them for who they really are, the emotional fallout can be devastating. Moreover, this dependency is compounded by self-deception. Even when the relationship or even the idea of the relationship brings you suffering, your mind clings to the belief that the other person is essential to your happiness. You build an elaborate mental story that reinforces the attachment, convincing yourself that you could never be happy without them or that you would never find such a connection again. In truth, this attachment only serves to keep you in a perpetual state of anxiety and dependence, where your emotional well-being is dictated by someone else's presence or absence. There is also a powerful cycle at work here. You might experience a surge of elation when you are close to this person, only to plummet into a deep despair when they are not available. These emotional highs and lows become a confusing and exhausting roller coaster, reinforcing the idea that your happiness is entirely contingent upon their actions or presence. And while you might believe that your attachment is based on genuine love, often it is also fueled by a deep-seated need for validation, a desperate search for the approval that you have never been able to give yourself. So what is the solution? How do you break free from this self-imposed emotional prison and reclaim your peace? The first step is to examine the very nature of your attachment. Instead of focusing solely on the need to let go of that person, ask yourself a deeper question. What are you really seeking in this relationship? What emotional void are you trying to fill? Often, the answer lies in recognizing that the attachment is not solely about the other person, but about the unmet needs within yourself. By understanding the root cause of your attachment, you can begin to address the underlying issues, whether they stem from past traumas, feelings of inadequacy, or a learned dependency on external validation. Once you identify these internal drivers, you can begin to work on nurturing your own sense of security and self-worth. Emotional detachment in this context is not about suppressing your feelings or ceasing to care. It is about reclaiming your emotional power. It is about recognizing that true well-being must come from within and that you are responsible for meeting your own needs. This involves a process of self-reflection and inner work, a journey of understanding your emotional patterns, discovering the wounds that have shaped your attachment style, and consciously choosing to heal those parts of yourself. Imagine if rather than continuously seeking solace from someone else, you could develop a profound inner resilience. What if you learned to observe your emotions without letting them control you, much like watching a storm pass over without being swept away by its winds? That is the essence of true emotional detachment. It is not about distancing yourself from feelings, but about transforming the way you experience them. When you no longer identify with the pain and dependency, you create space for growth and healing. You begin to see that the power to feel whole lies not in the validation of others, but in your own capacity to nurture and support yourself. This process of detachment requires deep self-awareness. It means understanding that the bonds you form with others are not merely reflections of who they are, but also mirrors of your inner world. When you become aware of these projections, you can start disentangling your sense of self from the expectations you place on relationships. The journey to emotional detachment is a gradual one, and it involves challenging long-held beliefs about love, security, and the nature of connection. It requires patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to confront the parts of yourself that you have long kept hidden away. As you begin to untangle these emotional knots, you may also find that detachment opens the door to a richer, more authentic experience of love. Rather than being defined by dependency, your relationships can evolve into expressions of mutual growth and respect. You learn to appreciate others for who they are without relying on them to complete you, and in that freedom, you find that love can flourish in a more balanced and healthy way. Emotional detachment, then, is not about cutting ties or shutting your heart off from the world. It is about reclaiming your emotional sovereignty and understanding that the source of your worth lies within you. In the process, you discover that the relationships that once felt like prisons of dependency can transform into spaces of genuine connection and growth. When you let go of the desperate need for validation, you create room for true intimacy, one that is based on mutual respect and a shared commitment to personal freedom. One of the most powerful insights in this journey is realizing that the difficulty in detaching often comes from the very nature of the bonds we form. Deep, meaningful connections can feel indispensable because they are tied to significant moments in our lives. These relationships become repositories for our memories, our hopes, and even our unfulfilled dreams. When you begin to see that these bonds are partly constructed by your own internal patterns, by unmet desires and old wounds, you gain the power to dismantle them. You start to understand that the attachment is not an inherent truth, but a series of learned responses that you can unlearn over time. A crucial part of this transformation is understanding the role of projection in emotional attachment. Often, the person you are so attached to is not the sole source of your happiness. Rather, they represent a part of yourself that you have been unable to fully express or accept. You project onto them the qualities you believe you lack, the sense of security, the validation, or the identity that you have been desperately seeking. Recognizing this projection is the first step toward breaking its hold on you. When you see that what you are truly longing for lies within you, you can begin the process of healing those internal gaps. This does not mean that the other person is unimportant. Rather, it means that you no longer depend on them to fill an emotional void that you are capable of healing yourself. The journey toward emotional detachment also involves a radical re-examination of your self-worth. Too often, people cling to relationships because they fear that without that external connection, they will lose their sense of identity. You might feel that if you let go, you will be left with nothing, an emptiness that no one else can fill. However, this fear is based on a misconception. True self-worth comes from within, not from external validation. When you learn to nurture your own identity, to invest in your own well-being, you begin to see that you are complete on your own. This shift in perspective is liberating because it takes away the power that others have over your emotional state. You become the source of your own happiness, no longer relying on the fluctuating presence of someone else to determine how you feel. Another essential aspect of developing emotional detachment is learning to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are not about pushing people away, they are about protecting your inner space so that you can maintain your sense of self. When you set clear limits about how much time and energy you invest in a relationship, you create a protective barrier that allows you to function without becoming overwhelmed. This practice is not selfish, it is a necessary step toward cultivating a balanced, fulfilling life. By setting boundaries, you affirm that your emotional well-being is a priority, and you teach others how to interact with you in a way that respects your autonomy. In addition to boundaries, self-reflective practices such as journaling, meditation, or therapy can be powerful tools in this process. These practices help you gain insight into your emotional patterns, identify triggers that cause you to cling, and ultimately create a more objective perspective on your relationships. When you regularly take time to explore your inner landscape, you begin to recognize the recurring themes that have kept you locked in cycles of attachment. With this awareness comes the possibility of change, of rewriting the narrative that has long dictated your emotional life. It is important to remember that emotional detachment is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It is about reclaiming your power, about choosing to live in a state of inner freedom where you are not defined by the actions or presence of others. When you learn to detach emotionally, you are not saying that you no longer care, rather you are saying that you care for yourself enough to let go of what no longer serves you. This new way of being allows you to engage in relationships from a place of strength and clarity rather than from fear and desperation. The transformation toward emotional detachment is a gradual, often challenging process, but its rewards are immense. When you break free from the chains of dependency, you open up a world where your emotional stability is not at the mercy of external circumstances. You begin to experience life with a deeper sense of calm and clarity, unburdened by the constant need to validate your existence through someone else. In this state, every moment becomes an opportunity to reconnect with your true self, to nurture the parts of you that have long been neglected, and to build a life that is truly your own. Ultimately, the secret to making nothing and no one affect you lies in understanding that your emotional world is yours to shape. When you learn to observe your feelings, question the stories your mind tells you, and let go of the need for external validation, you reclaim a profound inner freedom. You come to realize that every relationship, every attachment is an invitation to look inward and heal the parts of yourself that remain wounded. And as you take responsibility for your own emotional well-being, you step into a new way of living, one where your peace is not defined by what happens around you, but by the choices you make within. This is the path to true emotional detachment, a journey that transforms not only how you relate to others, but more importantly, how you relate to yourself.